A child's last wish is to meet John Kennedy. What he does for her, family changes them forever. The hospital room was a sterile cocoon, its air heavy with the sharp tang of antiseptic and the faint artificial sweetness of plastic flowers tucked into a vase on the windowsill. 8-year-old Lily Jacobs lay beneath a thin, pale blue hospital sheet, her small frame almost swallowed by the bed's oversized dimensions. Her skin was ghostly pale, a stark contrast to the vibrant brown curls that fanned out across the pillow, though they were thinner now, brittle from nearly 2 years of battling leukemia. Yet despite the toll the disease had taken, Lily's eyes sparkled with a quiet, unshakable light, a defiance that seemed to say she was still here, still fighting, even if her body was no longer keeping pace with her spirit. At her side, propped carefully against her arm, was a stuffed bunny, its once fluffy fur matted from years of love, one ear torn and dangling, held together by a clumsy stitch Lily had proudly sewn herself when she was 6. The bunny, whom she called Mr. Flops, was her constant companion, a silent witness to every needle, every tear, every small victory in her war against the illness that had upended her young life. The steady beep of the machines beside her bed formed a rhythmic backdrop, a metronome marking the precious seconds of her existence. Rachel, Jacobs Lily's mother, sat in a hard plastic chair pulled close to the bed, her fingers gently brushing those fragile curls from her daughter's forehead. Rachel's hands trembled slightly, not from fatigue, though she hadn't slept properly in weeks, but from the weight of love and fear that pressed against her chest. She wore a faded sweater, its sleeves stretched from nervous tugging, and her eyes were rimmed red, though she forced a smile whenever Lily looked her way. The doctors had been kind but honest. The treatments had stopped. There were no more options, no more experimental drugs, no more miracles to chase. The leukemia had won. What remained was time, fragile, fleeting time, and Rachel intended to fill every moment with as much love as she could muster. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the machines and the occasional shuffle of nurses' shoes in the hallway outside. A soft knock broke the stillness, and the door creaked open to reveal Sarah, the hospital's social worker, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice that seemed designed to soothe. She stepped inside her clipboard tucked against her chest and offered Rachel a small, understanding nod before speaking. "Rachel," she said softly, "I was wondering if we could talk about Lily's wishes. Has she mentioned something special she'd like to do?" The question hung in the air, delicate but heavy, a reminder of why Sarah was there. Rachel's lips trembled, and she glanced at Lily, who was gazing out the window at a sliver of gray Ohio sky. "She has," Rachel whispered, her voice cracking. "But it's unusual." Sarah tilted her head, encouraging her to continue her expression free of judgment. Rachel hesitated, then leaned closer to Sarah, lowering her voice so Lily wouldn't hear. "She wants to meet John Kennedy, the senator from Louisiana." Sarah blinked, surprised, but careful not to show it. "Senator John Neely Kennedy?" She clarified, her tone gentle. Rachel nodded, her cheeks flushing slightly, as if embarrassed by the audacity of her daughter's request. "I know it sounds crazy. We're just a small-town family. We don't know anyone important. But it's what she wants." Lily, as if sensing the conversation was about her, turned her head and smiled weakly, her eyes bright despite the fatigue that clung to her. "I want to meet him," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Everyone else picks Disney or singers. I want someone real, someone who does things that matter." The room seemed to hold its breath. Sarah knelt beside the bed, her face level with Lily's. "Can you tell me why Senator Kennedy, sweetheart?" she asked. Lily's fingers tightened around Mr. Flops, and she thought for a moment as if choosing her words carefully. "I saw him on TV once," she said. "He was talking about helping people and he sounded strong, like he doesn't give up, like me." Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that made Rachel's eyes well up. She turned her face away, pressing a hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. Sarah nodded, her own throat tightening. "That's a wonderful reason, Lily," she said. "I'll see what we can do." "Okay?" Lily's smile widened, though it was fleeting, her energy fading as she sank back into the pillows. Sarah stood, gave Rachel's shoulder a reassuring squeeze, and slipped out of the room, leaving mother and daughter alone again. Rachel sat there staring at the floor, her mind racing. How could she make this happen? John Kennedy was a United States Senator, a busy man with a packed schedule, likely surrounded by aides and security. They were nobody special, just a family from a quiet Ohio town scraping by on Rachel's part-time job at a diner, and the kindness of their community. The hospital bills had drained their savings long ago, and they were staying at the Ronald McDonald House nearby, a temporary home filled with other families carrying their own burdens. The idea of reaching someone like Kennedy felt as impossible as curing Lily's illness, but Rachel had made a promise to her daughter, whispered late at night when Lily was too weak to sit up. "I'll try, sweetheart. I'll try." That promise burned in her chest, now refusing to let her give up. She pulled her phone from her pocket, its screen cracked from a fall months ago, and opened a browser. She didn't know where to start. Should she call his office? Write a letter? Would anyone even read it? Her fingers hovered over the screen, uncertain, until she remembered a support group she'd joined online, a forum for parents of children with terminal illnesses. It was a place where people shared stories, offered advice, or sometimes just listened. Maybe someone there would know what to do. With Lily dozing beside her, Rachel typed a message, her thumbs moving quickly, despite the tears blurring her vision. "My daughter Lily is 8. She's been fighting leukemia for 2 years, and we're at the end. Her last wish is to meet Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana. I know it's a long shot, but does anyone have any ideas how to make this happen? She believes in him, and I don't want to let her down." She attached a photo of Lily, taken a few months earlier when she still had the strength to smile for the camera, her brown curls bouncing as she hugged Mr. Flops. Rachel hesitated, her finger hovering over the post button. It felt like shouting into a void, a desperate plea that would vanish into the noise of the internet. But she pressed it anyway, closed her phone, and leaned back in the chair, exhaustion washing over her. She didn't expect anything to come of it. Not really. But somewhere across the country, her words were about to find an unlikely reader. In a modest home in Florida, retired Marine Staff Sergeant Ray Dawson sat at his kitchen table, a cup of black coffee cooling beside him. The glow of his laptop illuminated his weathered face, etched with lines from years of service and the quieter battles of civilian life. Ray was a regular on a veterans forum, a place where old soldiers swapped stories, offered support, and occasionally helped each other navigate the world beyond the battlefield. He wasn't looking for anything in particular that night, just scrolling through posts to pass the time when Rachel's message caught his eye. He paused, his coffee forgotten, and read it again. The photo of Lily stared back at him, her wide, hopeful eyes reminding him of his niece, a little girl who loved to draw him pictures of stars and rockets. Something about Lily's story tugged at him, a pull he couldn't ignore. Ray had crossed paths with John Kennedy years ago during a veterans event in Louisiana, where the senator had spoken. Kennedy had struck him as genuine, a man who took the time to shake hands and listen even when the cameras weren't rolling. More importantly, Ray had a friend, Tom, who still worked in logistics for political events, someone who might know how to get a message to the senator's office. Ray leaned back in his chair, rubbing a hand over his graying stubble. He could let the post pass, assume someone else would step up. But Lily's face stayed with him, and so did her words about Kennedy's strength. Ray picked up his phone and dialed Tom's number. "Hey, it's me," he said when Tom answered, his voice gruff but steady. "I need a favor. There's a little girl real sick, wants to meet John Kennedy. Can you get a message to his people?" Tom hesitated on the other end, the sound of papers shuffling in the background. "Kennedy's a busy guy, Ray. You know how it is. Schedules, staff security." Ray nodded, though Tom couldn't see him. "I know, but this is a kid's last wish. She's got no time left. Tell them she believes in him more than most folks do. That's gotta count for something." Tom sighed, but there was a softness in it. "All right, I'll try. For the kid. Send me the details." Ray hung up, forwarded Rachel's post to Tom, and sat back staring at the photo of Lily. He didn't pray often, but that night he sent a quiet hope into the universe that this would work. Back in Ohio, Rachel was folding laundry at the Ronald McDonald house, a pile of Lily's tiny clothes stacked beside her. The simple act of folding socks felt like an anchor, a way to hold on to normalcy in a world that was anything but. Her phone sat on the table silent, its battery nearly dead. She hadn't checked the forum since posting, too afraid of seeing no replies, or worse, empty condolences. Lily was resting at the hospital, watched over by a nurse, and Rachel had stolen a moment to herself, though guilt gnawed at her for being away even briefly. The phone buzzed, startling her, and she fumbled to pick it up. The number was unfamiliar, an area code she didn't recognize. Her first thought was a bill collector. There were plenty of those, but something made her answer. "Hello?" she said, her voice hesitant. A formal voice responded, crisp and professional. "Is this Rachel Jacobs?" Rachel's heart skipped. "Yes? Who's this?" There was a pause. Then the voice said, "Please hold for Senator John Neely Kennedy." Rachel froze, the phone slipping slightly in her hand. She caught it before it fell, her pulse racing. Was this real? A prank? Her mind spun, but before she could process, a warm, southern drawl came through the line. "Rachel, this is John Kennedy," the voice said, its tone kind but direct. "I just heard about your daughter Lily. Let me tell you, she sounds like one brave young lady." Rachel's breath caught, and she pressed a hand to her chest, tears spilling over before she could stop them. She tried to speak, but no words came. Kennedy continued, his voice softening. "I'd like to come meet her if that's all right with you. We'll keep it quiet, just me and a small team. No fuss. This is for Lily." Rachel's voice finally broke free, a shaky whisper. "You'd do that?" "For her," Kennedy chuckled gently. "Ma'am, I wouldn't miss it. Tell Lily she's got a meeting with someone who's mighty impressed by her courage." The call ended with details about security and timing, but Rachel barely registered them. She sat on the couch, the laundry forgotten, her hands trembling as she clutched the phone. Tears streamed down her face, a mix of disbelief and gratitude. She didn't know how this had happened, didn't know who had carried Lily's wish to the senator, but for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope, not for a cure, but for her daughter's heart. That evening, Rachel returned to the hospital, her steps lighter despite the weight she carried. Lily was awake, propped up by pillows, her fingers tracing the torn ear of Mr. Flops. Rachel sat beside her, taking her small hand. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "someone special is coming to see you." Lily's eyes widened, curious. "Who?" Rachel smiled, tears brimming again. "The man you wanted to meet, Senator Kennedy." Lily's face lit up, a radiance that seemed to push back the shadows of the room. "Really?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Rachel nodded, squeezing her hand. Lily looked down at Mr. Flops, then back at her mother, a faint grin spreading. Then I better fix his ear. He's gotta look nice for a senator. Rachel laughed through her tears, pulling Lily into a gentle hug. For the first time in a long time, the hospital room didn't feel so cold. Outside, the Ohio sky was darkening, but inside a small light burned brightly, fueled by a little girl's dream and the promise of a man who had heard her call. The hospital room felt different now, as if Lily's wish had infused it with a fragile warmth that softened the sterile edges. The antiseptic smell still lingered, but it was less oppressive, overshadowed by the quiet anticipation that hummed between Lily Jacobs and her mother Rachel. Lily, propped up by pillows, clutched Mr. Flops, her stuffed bunny, her fingers fussing over his torn ear as if preparing him for a grand event. Her brown curls, though sparse, were tucked neatly behind her ears, and her pale cheeks held a faint flush of excitement. The news that Senator John Neely Kennedy was coming to visit had lit a spark in her, one that even the leukemia couldn't dim. Rachel sat beside her, her hands folded tightly in her lap, still reeling from the phone call that had turned an impossible dream into reality. She hadn't dared to check the online forum again, afraid to jinx the miracle that was unfolding. The machines beeped steadily, a reminder of the time slipping away. But for now, Rachel focused on Lily's smile, small but radiant, as they waited for the senator's arrival. Outside, the small Ohio town was unaware of the quiet stir about to take place. The Children's Hospital, a modest building with faded brick walls, stood at the edge of town, its parking lot dotted with family cars and a few delivery vans. No one noticed the discreet arrival of a black SUV, its windows tinted, pulling up to a side entrance. 2 aides and a single security officer stepped out, their movements efficient but unobtrusive. Senator John Neely Kennedy emerged last, his tall frame slightly stooped as he adjusted his suit jacket. He carried no entourage, no press, just a small leather notebook tucked under his arm and a determined look in his eyes. The hospital administrator, a woman named Clara, who had been briefed only hours earlier, met him at the entrance, her expression a mix of awe and nervous professionalism. "Senator Kennedy, we're honored," she said, shaking his hand. Kennedy's southern drawl was warm but brisk. "Ma'am, the honor's mine. I'm here for a little girl who's got more courage than most folks I know." "Let's keep this simple, all right." Clara nodded, leading him through a quiet corridor to the private wing where Lily's room waited. Inside, Rachel stood, as the door opened, her heart pounding. Lily's eyes widened, and she sat up a little straighter, clutching Mr. Flops tightly. Kennedy stepped in his presence, filling the small room without overwhelming it. His suit was dark, his tie a muted blue, but his smile was genuine, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Well, hello there, young lady," he said, his voice soft, but carrying that unmistakable Louisiana cadence. "I hear you've been asking to meet me. I'm John Kennedy." Lily's face broke into a grin, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. "You really came?" she asked, her voice a whisper of disbelief. Kennedy pulled the plastic chair closer to her bed and sat leaning forward so they were eye to eye. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he said. "Now tell me about this Mr. Flops fella. He looks like he's got some stories." Lily giggled, holding up the bunny. "He's my best friend. His ear's torn, but I fixed it." Kennedy nodded solemnly, inspecting the stitch. "That's fine work, Lily. You've got a steady hand." The conversation flowed easily, not about politics or the world beyond the hospital walls, but about the things that mattered to an 8-year-old. Lily told him about her favorite book, a story about a girl who flew with eagles and how she'd always wanted to be a pilot. "I want to fly in a red plane," she said, her eyes distant but bright. "Up high where I can see the clouds and wave at people below." Kennedy listened, his face attentive, never interrupting. He asked about her dreams, her favorite color purple, and whether Mr. Flops liked carrots. He did, but only pretend ones. Rachel stood by the door, her arms crossed, tears brimming, as she watched her daughter light up in a way she hadn't seen in months. Kennedy pulled a small silver pin from his jacket pocket, shaped like an eagle with its wings spread. "This was given to me by a friend who said it stands for courage," he told Lily. "I think it belongs to you now." Lily's fingers trembled as she took it, holding it like a treasure. "Thank you, Mr. Kennedy," she whispered. He smiled, then leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Call me John, and I've got a feeling you're gonna fly, Lily. Not just in your dreams." She nodded, her eyes shining as if sealing a secret pact. The visit lasted nearly an hour longer than anyone had expected. Kennedy didn't check his watch, didn't glance at his aides waiting outside. He stayed until Lily's eyelids began to droop, her energy fading. Before he left, he took her hand, small and fragile, in his, and said, "You're one of a kind, Lily Jacobs. Don't you forget that." He stood, giving Rachel a nod that carried more understanding than words could. "She's a fighter," he said quietly. Rachel's voice broke as she replied, "You've given her something no one else could." Kennedy shook his head. "No, ma'am. She's given me something." He left as quietly as he'd come, the hospital staff watching in hushed reverence as he disappeared down the corridor. Rachel sank into the chair beside Lily, who was already half asleep, the silver eagle pin clutched in her hand. "He said I'd fly," Lily murmured, a faint smile on her lips. Rachel kissed her forehead, assuming it was a sweet promise meant to comfort. She didn't know that Kennedy had meant it literally. The next morning, Kennedy was back in his office, but his mind was still in that hospital room. Lily's words about the red plane had lodged in his heart, a vivid image he couldn't shake. He'd met countless people in his career, veterans, farmers, teachers, but none had struck him quite like this 8-year-old girl with a torn bunny and a dream bigger than her fragile body could hold. He picked up his phone and called a contact he hadn't spoken to in years. A retired Air Force pilot named Commander Ellen Lane, a woman he'd once honored at a veterans event for her service. "Ellen," he said when she answered, "I need a favor. There's a little girl real sick, wants to fly in a red plane. Can you make that happen?" Lane, her voice steady despite her surprise, asked for details. Kennedy explained Lily's story, her courage, her dream. "She's got no time left," he said. "I want her to have this." Lane didn't hesitate. "I've got a friend with a red biplane in Ohio. I'll fly it myself. Just tell me when and where." Kennedy's voice softened. "You're a good woman, Ellen. I'll handle the rest." Over the next few days, plans moved quickly but quietly. Kennedy's office coordinated with the hospital, arranging for a medical team to ensure Lily could handle the short flight. A private airfield just outside town was secured, its owner a local farmer, who waived all fees when he heard the story. Rachel was folding laundry at the Ronald McDonald House when her phone rang again, this time from Clara, the hospital administrator. "Rachel, we've got something unusual," Clara said, her voice cautious but warm. "Senator Kennedy's team has arranged a flight for Lily. A red plane just like she wanted. Doctors and nurses will be there to keep her safe." Rachel's breath caught her hands freezing mid-fold. "A flight," she whispered. "He wasn't joking," Clara chuckled softly. "No, ma'am, he meant every word." Rachel hung up her mind, spinning. She hurried to the hospital, her heart a tangle of joy and fear. Lily was so weak now, her moments of energy fleeting. Could she handle this? But when Rachel told her about the plane, Lily's eyes lit up brighter than they'd been in weeks. "A red plane," she asked, her voice trembling with excitement. "For me," Rachel nodded, tears falling. "For you, sweetheart." The day of the flight dawned clear, the Ohio sky a rare, unblemished blue. The medical team worked through the night to stabilize Lily, adjusting her medications and ensuring she was strong enough for the short trip. A nurse, a kind woman named Maria, fitted Lily with a tiny pilot's cap donated by a local veteran who'd heard about her wish. Lily giggled as Maria adjusted the cap, her fingers brushing Mr. Flops's ear. "He's coming too," Lily insisted, and Maria nodded, tucking the bunny into a small bag for the journey. Rachel rode with Lily in a medical van to the airfield, her hand never leaving her daughter's. The airfield was a quiet stretch of grass and gravel, its single runway flanked by fields of corn. The red biplane stood waiting, its wings gleaming like polished rubies in the sunlight. Commander Ellen Lane, her silver hair pulled back, knelt beside Lily as the medical team gently lifted her from the van. "Ready to fly?" Captain Lane asked, her voice warm but steady. Lily grinned, weak but radiant. "Yes, ma'am." With careful hands, the team settled Lily into the front seat of the open cockpit, strapping her in securely. Mr. Flops sat on her lap, his torn ear flapping in the breeze. Lane took the seat behind her, checking the controls with practiced ease. Rachel stood at the edge of the runway, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes locked on her daughter. The engine roared to life, a deep, throaty hum that vibrated through the ground. The biplane rolled forward, gaining speed, and then, with a graceful lift, it was airborne. Lily's laughter carried on the wind, faint but unmistakable, as the plane climbed. Rachel's tears fell freely now, not from sorrow, but from the sight of her daughter, soaring free for the first time in years. The plane tilted gently, its red wings catching the sun, and Lily waved her small hand, visible against the blue sky. For 15 minutes, she was weightless, a girl with eagles waving at the world below. Lane kept the flight smooth, circling the airfield, her own eyes as misty as she heard Lily's soft giggles through the headset. When the plane touched down, the medical team was ready, but Lily was still smiling, her cheeks flushed with joy. "I flew," she whispered to Rachel as they lifted her back to the van. Rachel hugged her, careful not to squeeze too hard. "You did, baby. You flew." That night, back in the hospital, Lily's strength began to fade faster. She lay in bed, the silver eagle pin in her hand, Mr. Flops at her side. Rachel sat beside her, stroking her hair, memorizing every detail of her face. "He kept his promise," Lily murmured, her voice barely audible. "I told you he would." Rachel nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Lily's eyes closed and she slipped into a peaceful sleep, her breathing slow but steady. The doctors had warned Rachel it wouldn't be long now, but in that moment, all she could see was her daughter's smile, the way she'd looked in the sky. Across the country, Kennedy sat in his office, a photo of Lily on his desk, taken by a nurse during the flight. He didn't know she'd taken her last flight, not yet, but he knew what she'd given him, a reminder of why he served, why he fought. He picked up his phone again, this time to call a colleague in Washington. "We need to do something bigger," he said, "for kids like Lily. I've got an idea." The seeds of something new were planted, a legacy that would outlive the little girl who'd dreamed of flying. The hospital room was silent now, the steady beep of machines replaced by an aching stillness. Lily Jacobs had slipped away in her sleep. Her small hand curled around the silver eagle pin Senator John Neely Kennedy had given her, Mr. Flops nestled against her side. Rachel Jacobs sat beside the empty bed, her fingers tracing the edge of the pale blue sheet, as if it could somehow hold on to her daughter's warmth. The grief was a tidal wave, heavy and relentless, but beneath it was a flicker of peace. Lily had flown. Her dream fulfilled, her final moments filled with joy. The red biplane, the laughter, the wave from the sky. These were the memories Rachel clung to, fragile anchors in a sea of loss. Outside, the Ohio town carried on its quiet streets, unaware of the spark that was about to ignite a legacy born from a little girl's courage and a senator's promise. In the days that followed, Rachel moved through a fog of sorrow, sorting through Lily's things at the Ronald McDonald House. She found the pilot's cap, the silver pin, and Mr. Flops, each item a piece of her daughter's spirit. She didn't know how to go on, but she knew she had to for Lily. One morning, as she sat with a cup of cold coffee, her phone buzzed with a message from Clara, the hospital administrator. Rachel, Senator Kennedy's office reached out. "They want to talk to you about something for Lily. Can you come to the hospital?" Rachel's heart tightened, a mix of curiosity and exhaustion. She drove to the hospital, her hands gripping the wheel, unsure what to expect. Clara met her in the lobby, her face gentle but purposeful. "He's on a video call," she said, leading Rachel to a small office. On the screen was Kennedy, his southern drawl unmistakable even through the grainy connection. "Rachel," he said, his voice warm but heavy. "I'm so sorry about Lily. She was a light, and I'll never forget her." Rachel nodded, tears brimming, unable to speak. Kennedy leaned closer to the camera. "I've been thinking about her, about what she taught me. I want to do something in her honor, something big. A program to help kids like her, to give them their dreams. I'm calling it Eagle's Wings for Lily. Will you help me make it real?" Rachel's breath caught. She hadn't expected this, hadn't imagined her daughter's name carrying on. "Yes," she whispered, "for her." Kennedy moved quickly. From his office, he rallied colleagues, nonprofits, and businesses, pitching Eagle's Wings as a national fund to grant final wishes for terminally ill children whose families couldn't afford them. He spoke of Lily not as a political tool, but as a child who'd changed him, her courage, a reminder of what mattered. The response was swift and overwhelming. A local Ohio businessman pledged the first $100,000, moved by a newspaper article about Lily's flight. Schools in the state launched fundraisers, students selling bracelets with tiny eagle charms. Rachel, still grieving, found herself pulled into the effort, sharing Lily's story at a community meeting. Her voice shook, but the crowd listened, some wiping tears, others nodding in resolve. "She was just a little girl," Rachel said, clutching the silver pin, but she believed one person could make a difference. She believed in Senator Kennedy, and he believed in her. The room erupted in applause, and Rachel felt Lily's presence, a quiet strength guiding her. The movement grew beyond Ohio. A viral post on a parenting forum shared Lily's story, complete with a photo of her in the pilot's cap, waving from the red biplane. Thousands shared it, their comments, a chorus of grief and inspiration. "This is what humanity looks like," one wrote. "Lily flew, and now she's lifting us all." Veterans groups, inspired by Commander Ellen Lane's role, offered free flights for other children, their planes painted with eagle motifs in Lily's honor. A national morning show invited Lane to speak, and she sat under bright lights, her silver hair gleaming, her voice steady. "I've flown for generals and diplomats," she said, "but flying Lily was my proudest mission." She laughed every time we tilted, like she was dancing with the clouds. The host's eyes welled up, and viewers across the country reached for tissues. By the end of the week, Eagle's Wings had raised enough to fund 500 wishes, from zoo trips to ballet lessons to one child's dream of meeting a firefighter. Rachel, though overwhelmed, found purpose in the program. She visited schools telling students about Lily's courage and encouraging them to help others. At one assembly, a shy fifth grader stood and said, "I want to start an Eagle's Wings Club for Lily." Others joined, and soon dozens of schools had clubs, their members organizing bake sales and writing letters to sick children. Rachel kept Mr. Beer flops on a shelf in Lily's old room, now a quiet sanctuary where neighbors sometimes came to sit, not to mourn, but to feel inspired. One evening, Rachel found an envelope on her doorstep postmarked from Washington. Inside was a handwritten note from Kennedy. "Rachel, Lily's changed more lives than I can count, mine included. Eagle's Wings is just the start. You're part of this, too." Attached was a proposal for a National Lily Jacobs Day, a bipartisan effort to honor children fighting terminal illnesses. Rachel's hands trembled as she read it, her tears smudging the ink. She posted the letter online, and it spread like wildfire, trending with the hashtag #LiliesWings. People shared stories of their own losses, their own hopes, united by a little girl they'd never met. The airfield where Lily had flown became a pilgrimage site of sorts. A local carpenter built a bench overlooking the runway, its plaque reading, "For Lily Jacobs, who flew higher than fear." Rachel visited one afternoon, sitting alone as a small plane took off its wings, catching the sun. A family approached their son, a boy with cancer preparing for his own Eagle's Wings flight. The mother recognized Rachel and hesitated before offering a hug. No words were needed. Their shared pain and hope said enough. Kennedy, meanwhile, spoke at a charity gala, holding a photo of Lily in her pilot's cap. "I plan to talk about policy," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "but instead I want to tell you about a girl who taught me what courage means." The room fell silent, then rose in a standing ovation, their donations that night pushing Eagle's Wings past $1 million. A tech billionaire, moved by the story, matched contributions up to $5 million, tweeting, "Lily didn't need a rocket to reach the stars. Let's help more kids soar." The funds poured in enough for thousands of wishes. The lesson of Lily's story crystallized in every heart. It touched one small life, however brief, could ripple outward, changing the world through courage and kindness. For children, it was a call to dream big, no matter the odds. For adults, it was a reminder to listen, to act, to make a difference for someone in need. Eagle's Wings became more than a program. It was a movement, a testament to the power of compassion in a divided world. Rachel, standing at a school assembly months later, held up Lily's pilot's cap and said, "My daughter taught me that even when you're scared, you can still fly. She'd want you to try too." A girl in the front row raised her hand. "I'm going to help someone," she said, "because of Lily." Others nodded, their young faces serious but hopeful. Rachel smiled, feeling Lily's spirit in the room. The world was different now, not because of grand gestures, but because a little girl had dared to dream and a senator had dared to care. Lily's Wings were everywhere, lifting hearts one dream at a time.